In this last section, we're going to look at two kinds of formula or two formulas. One is called double angle and the other one is half angle. And it's just another way of solving angles that we may not know the answer to because they're in the unit circle. They're not in the unit circle. And it's the same idea as sum and difference formula from the previous section, but it's a different way of finding answers. So first day, we're going to look at both double angle and half angle formula. And then the second day, we're going to solve some kind of weird equations using these formulas. Okay, so these formulas are really very much related to the sum and difference formula, and I don't have time to show you how it's derived from the sum and difference formula. So you're going to just kind of memorize the formula for now, or just look at a formula sheet for now. But next year in pre-calc, I will show you how we can derive these formulas from the sum and difference formula. Okay, so for the cosine double angle formula, there are three different ones you can use. Okay, so the first one is cosine squared minus sine squared. The second one is 2 cosine squared minus 1. And the third one is 1 minus 2 sine squared. So you might be asking, well, which one should I use? The answer is you can use any of them. Whichever one is easier for you to use at that time based on the information you're given. So sometimes you're given only cosine, then you should probably use this one that only has cosine. And sometimes you're given sine, then you would use this one, and so on. So it's, the answer is it depends. Sine 2 theta only has one formula, that is 2 sine theta cosine theta. And the last one, tangent 2 theta, that is 2 tangent theta over 1 minus tangent squared. All right, so now the question is, how are we supposed to use these formulas? So the key question you should ask yourself is, when you see a problem, you ask yourself, if you want to turn it into a double angle formula kind of problem, you ask yourself, 2 times what angle gives the angle in question? And basically, you would multiply the angle, not multiply, you would divide the angle by 2. All right, so for example, find the exact value cosine 120 using double angle form identity. Of course, you can already know what cosine 120 is based on the unit circle, but this one says, please use the double angle identity. So the question you should ask yourself is, 2 times what gives me 120? So that's what I meant here. 2 times what angle gives the angle in question? The angle in question is 120. So 2 times what angle is 120? Or what you can do is just divide that angle by 2. All right, very easy. It is 2 times 60. So then what you want to do now is use the double angle formula for cosine, but the angle you're supposed to use is 60. So inside the formula for all the cosine double angle, this angle here that's appearing in all these places I'm highlighting now should be 60 degrees. All right, so now the question is, which formula should you use? Well, you can use any of them. I'm going to make things not too hard for myself. So I'm going to just choose the one that only has cosine or only has sine. I don't want to do both sine and cosine at the same time. It's just too much work. So I'm just going to choose the 2 cosine square one. Okay, so now applying the formula, 2 cosine squared just means cosine of that angle squared, like that. So if you don't know what that 2 goes, it goes outside when you're actually applying the formula, and then minus 1. All right, now you got to remember the formula or unit circle. So cosine 60 degrees is 1/2. So this is 2 times 1/4 minus 1. 2 times 1/4 is 1/2, so 1/2 minus 1 is negative 1/2. Okay, so that's how you use the double angle identity. All right, let's try another one. Find the exact value of sine 60 using double angle formula. So again, sine of 60, so if we want to use a double angle formula, we're asking ourselves 2 times what angle gives me 60? So that's going to be 30. Okay, applying the double angle formula, which is 2 sine cosine. This becomes 2 sine 30 times cosine 30. Okay, so sine 30 degrees is 1/2. Cosine 30 degrees is square root 3 over 2. Multiply everything together. First, this cancels, so it's just square root 3 over 2. All right, let's go ahead and have you try finding the following values using the double angle identity. So go ahead and pause this video and come back and check your answer. All right, go ahead and check your answers. So you probably want to check tangent and see how that formula is applied to make sure you do apply it correctly. And then cosine 4 pi over 3, if you have no idea how to figure out what number doubled is 4 pi over 3, you can always just take that the angle in question and divide by 2. And then I used the third formula for cosine double angle because I just wanted to show you how that's done with different kinds of formula. Okay, half angle formula is the same idea. So we also have 3 different formula for the 3 trig functions. Yeah, okay. So here are the formulas for sine theta over 2 is going to be plus minus square root of 1 minus cosine theta over 2. For cosine theta over 2, that's going to be plus minus square root of 1 plus cosine theta over 2. And tangent theta is pretty easy to memorize because it is just going to be sine over cosine. So it's going to be plus minus square root of sine. For sine, it was 1 minus cosine theta over 2. And then we're going to divide by 1 plus cosine squared over 2. And what's going to happen is when you're dividing by a fraction, you're multiplying by a reciprocal. So the 2's cancel. So you end up with 1 plus cosine theta in the denominator. Now a little bit of discussion about this plus minus. So again, it's not like when you square root a number and you say that there is plus or minus of that answer. There are not 2 answers to every half angle formula. You choose one, you choose plus or minus, depending on which quadrant you think the angle will be in because of that angle. So, this basically is saying like you choose, and it sounds kind of scary, like which one, how am I supposed to figure out the right one? So I'm going to show you how to do it correctly, so you can always choose the correct sign. Now, since we're doing half angle and not double angle, so your question that you ask yourself is going to be different from when you ask yourself about the double angle. So for double angle, you always say what angle multiplied by 2 gives me that angle in question. This kind of question for half angle, you will say what angle divided by 2 would give me that angle that's in the question. Or you can just multiply the angle by 2. Okay, so for example, find the exact value of sine 60 degrees using half angle identity. All right, so we're using half angle identity, so we're not saying 2 times what angle gives me 60. Rather, we're asking ourselves, what angle divided by 2 gives me 60? So what angle break into half is going to give me 60? So that is 120 degrees. Okay, now we're going to use 120 degrees as that angle for the formula. Okay, according to the half angle formula for sine, it's going to be 1 minus cosine theta over 2. So we're going to put in 1 minus cosine 120 and then divide by 2. All right, let's look at 120 degrees cosine. So cosine 120 degrees is negative 1/2. So 1 minus 1/2 over 2. All right, let's do some work up here. So this is plus minus square root of 1 plus 1/2 over 2, which is plus minus square root of 3 over 2 over 2. 3 over 2 over 2 is the same as saying 3 over 2 times the reciprocal, so times 1/2. So this is plus minus square root of 3 over 4. So the answer is plus minus square root 3 over 2. So remember, you can break the radicals into 2 radicals when it's in a fraction. And since square root of 4 is 2, we can simplify that. Now, I said in the beginning of this section for half angle that you have to choose plus or minus based on which quadrant it's in. So how are you supposed to do that? Well, what you do is you look at sine 60, because sine 60 is, ultimately the question you're trying to answer, right? So then you ask yourself, where is 60 degrees? Which quadrant? Well, that's first quadrant. Ooh, a little higher. First quadrant. And then you ask yourself, well, in that quadrant, is sine supposed to be positive or negative? Well, remember, all students take calculus. So in that first quadrant, sine is positive. Therefore, we choose the positive. So you have to know whether the sign should be positive or negative in that quadrant, and not just randomly pick one. You have to pick the correct one. All right, let's try this next one. Find the, actually, you know what? These are really easy. So I'm going to skip this one. Let me help you on a practice one. Let me show you how to do tangent 5 pi over 6, and then you can do this one. Okay, so using half angle identity, find tangent 5 pi over 6. So again, we're going to ask ourselves, what angle divided by 2 is going to give me 5 pi over 6? Again, that is not easy to do. So the question you should ask yourself is, this angle times 2 is what? So kind of like going backwards. Well, that's going to cancel out, so 5 pi over 3. So 5 pi over 3 divided by 2 is going to give me 5 pi over 6. Okay, so now let's go ahead and apply the formula. So plus minus square root of 1 minus cosine theta over 1 plus cosine theta. Plus minus 1 minus cosine 5 pi over 3 over 1 plus cosine 5 pi over 3. All right. 5 pi over 3 for cosine. So let's kind of think about where 5 pi over 3 is. And then ask yourself, what is the cosine of that angle? All right, so it is going to be 1/2. Okay. So now we just simplify this. So plus minus. And this is going to be 1/2 over 3/2. Okay, so that is 1/2 times 2 over 3. That cancels. We get square root 1 over 3. Remember to rationalize your answer. I'm sorry, I forgot plus minus. So then you're going to multiply top and bottom by square root 3. You get plus minus square root 3 over 3. All right, last thing to do is you got to pick plus or minus. So first we look at 5 pi over 6. That's the ultimate angle we're trying to solve. 5 pi over 6 is here. So then you ask yourself, all students take calculus. Is tangent supposed to be positive or negative in that quadrant? It is negative. So this should be negative square root 3 over 3. All right, now it's time for you to practice sine 165 degrees. So go ahead and set up the half angle. So what angle divided by 2 is going to give you 165 degrees? Or 165 degrees doubled is what angle? All right, please check to see if you got the correct answer. This one is a little tricky because this angle that is in the question is not any number that's in the unit circle, unlike the other ones that we have tried. So then your answer is obviously not going to be one of the unit circle answers that you have seen before. And there are a lot of little details or techniques in solving this using previously learned algebra concepts. So please be careful. And also please take a look at this answer. You have a radical inside a radical, which is okay. But you do have to write it out very clearly. So please be careful. All right, let's look at the next page. So let's use, so we're adding on to our tool belts or our tool bags of all the things that we can do to verify identities. So the things that we had learned before were just the Pythagorean identities, and we use that to do some verifications. Now that we learned some more identities like the double angle and half angle, we're gonna use them as well to help us verify some identities. Okay, so I have not tried this one yet, so I'm not sure if I can get to the answer. So we'll see. Let's try this. So we have to verify the identity that the left-hand side is the same as the right-hand side. I am thinking that 1 plus tangent square is secant square. I'm gonna start from there and see if I get anywhere close. So, a lot of times I don't know how to solve a problem. Sometimes you run into that situation too. So just know that your teacher doesn't always know exactly how to solve every problem. I also try and fail and then try something else, just like you sometimes do. Okay. I'm not sure. So I am gonna split this like this. Hopefully this makes the problem simpler and not harder. 1 over secant squared, I know that's cosine squared. Tangent squared, that's sine over cosine. And then secant squared is another 1 over cosine squared. Okay, I'm going to simplify that 1 on the right. So sine squared over cosine squared times cosine squared. That cancels, whoops. So that is cosine squared minus sine squared. All right, now if you look back at the cosine double angle identity, there are 3 different choices. One of the choice is this one. So we can just say this is cosine 2 theta. Make sure you write your 2 theta, not like square theta. You see how these are very similar? Please be careful that your square looks like a square and 2 looks like a 2, or else if I'm looking at your work, I might be confused. So please be careful of that. All right, so now let's have you try. Verify that 2 cosine 2 theta is 4 cosine squared minus 2. I think this one's pretty easy. You should probably get to the answer really quickly. So go ahead and try this one. All right, this pretty much is a one-step question. As long as you pick the right cosine double angle to use. If you pick the wrong one, it will take you a little bit of time to get back to the answer, but it's possible. But hopefully you kind of realize that there is there are 3 different options and you can just try the other 2 instead of just settling on one and try to fix it. And that is it for today's lesson.